Hey guys, Brandon Woolum, CCM Magazine. Today we are checking in with Travis Tritt. What's up, man?
How you doing, buddy?
Good, good. So a pretty big week for you. After 30 years of a huge career, the first gospel project is finally coming out this week. Country Chapel, going to be out this Friday, September 15th. Why the gospel now after 30 years? Why is the gospel album coming out now?
Well, I had nothing to do with the timing. I've been wanting to make this album ever since I first started in music, but because it takes me back to my roots. I started singing in church when I was as far back as four, I think, and it's just one of those things that my mother constantly. She didn't hound me about it, but she constantly was that spark behind, son, I hope that you get an opportunity to do a gospel album one day. And we've talked about it. I've even mentioned it to some of the record labels I've been with over the years, and it just always seemed like the timing was not right, or there was some other reason that they gave for not wanting to do it. But this past year, last year in 2022, I had an opportunity to sit down and talk with the folks at Gaither Music, and they were extremely excited about the opportunity to help me create this album. And so once we got the green light, we started working toward the end of last year, last December, uh, working on putting the songs together, writing some of the songs for the album, and we went in the studio this March, and the album is done.
That is awesome. And people are going to recognize a lot of these songs on here, but there's some original tracks on there too. When did you write
Absolutely.
these? When did you write the original tracks? Have those been around the career of the 30-year span, or are these recent writes?
There were two, I wrote three songs for this album, wrote or co-wrote three songs for this album, and two of them were very recent. I wrote them earlier this year with a great songwriter by the name of Aaron Retier, and it was the first time that he and I had ever had a chance to write together. So I just basically sat down and gave him some ideas that I had been, mulling around with, and he really latched on to each one of them. One of them was a song called uh, "My Mama Used to Pray for Me," and it basically talks about that was a personal experience that I had numerous times where my mother's prayers, I really could feel that they were connecting, and that they were having an impact on my life. And the other was based on an old experience that I had in Nashville when I first got started in the business. Um, I went to Nashville a lot to record and to write. And I passed by early one Saturday morning, I passed by a church where there was a guy standing out in front of the steps of the church, and he was just looking up, and I could tell, he wasn't totally sober. He was, kind of leaning a little bit, but I was wondering, it made just such a huge impression. It was almost like your mind takes a photograph of that. And it made such a huge impression. And I mentioned that to Aaron, and he said immediately, he said, I can just envision what was going through that guy's mind at the time. So we wrote the song that ended up being the title cut for the album, which is called Little Country Chapel. And then the third song was a song that I actually, probably one of the first songs that I ever wrote in my life, back in when I was in my mid-teens. I don't remember the exact age, but it was somewhere between 13 and 16. And I was at that particular time going through that awkward phase that most teenagers go through, and just feeling just sort of out of place, because the only thing that I was really interested in at that time was music. And so I found myself alone a lot. I found myself feeling sort of disconnected from a lot of my uh, peers and classmates and things like that. And I really was having a hard time with it. And I prayed about it one night, and had one of the most unexplainable, dramatic profound experiences that I've ever had of really truly feeling like the Spirit of God was in the room with me. And I was so moved by that experience that I wrote the song Like the Father Loves His Son in several days or weeks after that experience. And I never published it. I never did anything with it. I just sort of kept it in my back pocket, hoping that one day I would have this opportunity to do this gospel album because I knew I wanted to put that song on the album. And so I've had that one for quite a while.
It's one of the songs that people can listen to right now, When God Dips His Love in My Heart. That one features the Oak Ridge Boys. How'd that collaboration come to be?
I just knew I wanted to work with those guys. I was always a fan, still am. But when the opportunity came to record that particular song, I felt like it needed that old gospel quartet sound on it. And I got in touch with Joe Bonzel, that I knew basically through social media, and got in touch with him and asked if the Oak Ridge Boys would be able to come in and help me out on that particular song. And they, much to my gratification and much to my surprise, they said they would. And we brought them in, and they just did a fantastic job on that song.
Are there any other special guests we're going to hear when we listen to this album this Friday?
As a matter of fact, there are. On the song Why Me, Larry Gatlin, if you listen to the original version of that song, or at least the first version of it that I ever heard, done by Chris Christopherson, the guy that wrote it, back in the 70s, he did that song on an album that was called Jesus Was a Capricorn. And in the harmony parts on the choruses, you can hear distinctly Larry Gatlin's voice. That was him singing on the harmony parts. So when we decided to record that song, I thought, what would be better than bringing the Gatlin brothers in and let them sing on that particular song. And once again, I got in touch with Larry, and he graciously agreed, and they came in and did just a fantastic job on Why Me.
The 10 tracks made the cut for this album. I'm sure there was a lot more. How did you narrow down which 10 songs you wanted to be on this project?
That was a tough one because most people, especially in country music, most people that do gospel albums, they go back to the hymns, and those hymns are great, and I totally understand why they do. But I wanted to do something just a little bit different. I wanted to do songs that maybe people would recognize, but do them in a more obscure way, and also pick some of the songs that people might not immediately recognize from the past. And once I got that notion in my head, then it was just a matter of whittling down to the ones that really, really I felt impacted me the most when I heard them as a kid, as a teenager. So once we got that done, it made it fairly easy to put the songs together for this album. And I really feel like that every one of these songs were truly some of the most impactful songs in my life that I heard as a kid growing up. And I hope that will be reflected, and that feeling will get across to the people that listen to it today. And it won't sound like anything else that they've heard.
Yeah, I got to see you.
Sound like a Travis Tritt album,
Yeah, I got to see you perform these tracks live a week or so ago here in Nashville. And I kind of went in not knowing what to expect, thought I was probably going to hear you with a guitar doing some hymns. And I was shocked. This album is going to be pretty rocking. You're going to be bobbing your head, dancing. You can't just sit there and listen to this one. It's a rocking gospel album.
I felt it was important to include all of the different elements, the different influences that I've had, which are all over the place. I mean, I grew up listening to everything from gospel to blues to country to bluegrass to rock and roll. I mean, the whole thing. And I've always tried to include little elements of that in every album that I've ever done. And I felt, why should this be different? Even though it's a gospel album, let's include all of those different elements that I've always included on every album that I've ever done. And through the help of a brilliant guy by the name of Dave Cobb, who helped produce this album for me, um, all of that was able to, we were able to get all of that out and do songs that, some of them very traditional, some of them um, more rocked up, some of them more bluesy, but we were able to include all of those different elements. And even on the songs that people might recognize before, you've never heard them done this way.
Yep. So that performance that I'm talking about, that was actually filmed for a DVD that's going to be released in conjunction with this album. Will that be the only chance people are going to get to see this performed live, or are you going to be touring this gospel project too?
I probably won't do the entire album live again, but I've been thinking about and talking about the possibility of including some of these songs in future concert performances. For example, the song that I did, "Uncloudy Day," on this particular album, that was a song that Willie Nelson, back in the 70s and the 80s, used to close every one of his shows with that song, because it's just one of those uplifters, and it makes you want to tap a toe, and it just leaves people feeling great. So we may include that and maybe a couple more on some of the upcoming shows that we're going to be doing later on.
Cool. As people get Country Chapel in their hands this Friday, what's a track you want them to really listen into close? Make sure they don't miss it.
I really want them to focus on, well, I want them to focus on the whole album, but I really want to get them to pay attention to my personal favorite. And I normally don't ever have favorites, because that's like telling you which one of your kids is your favorite. But I have to say, on this particular album, that song, "Like the Father Loves His Son," that song I really think carries a strong message that a lot of people need to hear. That basically, right now, especially when there's so much turmoil and there's so many things that distract us going on in the world. I just think that song is a song that people need to hear, just to remind them that God loves you.
Anybody that knows Travis Tritt knows you've never been one to hide your beliefs over these years, and especially these past couple of years with everything going on.
Yeah.
What makes you have that no fear of commenting on social issues that some of these artists might hold back on, or be told to hold back on? But Travis Tritt ain't holding back.
I'm extremely grateful for the fact that I'm not beholden to anybody. And I realize there's a lot of artists out there that might want to say things about the current status in the world, and some of the things that are happening that are troubling to some of us. But the fact is that they can't, because as soon as they try to, the record labels would probably kick them off if it was contrary to what many in the record labels believed, or they would have other people, publicists or managers or other people say, "You can't say that. You can't do that. You can think it, but you can't say it, because if you do, we're gonna drop you." And I don't have any of that situation in my life. Fortunately, I'm one of those people that I manage myself. I don't have anybody at any record label telling me what I can say, what I can't say. And so I am, in that respect, uncancelable. And it gives me a lot of joy to be able to do that, because also, I'm 60 years old, and I probably spent a good portion of my life sort of keeping some of the things back that I really wanted to say, or just share some of my opinions. But I didn't, because I was connected to some of those entities. But I don't have any of that anymore. I'm 60 years old and can say whatever I want to. And that's exactly what I am doing. And I realize that freedom is rare. and it's something that not a lot of people have, but I do have it, and I'm going to use it.
Love it. Country Chapel going to be out this Friday, September 15th. It'll be streaming. And with this one being on Gaither, I'm guessing we're going to be able to get a hard copy of this too, right?
Absolutely. It'll be available on CDs, and I understand that vinyl is coming on it as well.
Wow. Okay. September 15th, this Friday, Country Chapel from Travis Tritt, the first gospel album he's ever done. Took 30 years. Will there be another one? Is there more gospel in the works?
When the whittling was done, there were so many songs left over that I would have loved to have recorded. So who knows? There may be another one at some point.
I love it. Well, thanks for hanging out with us today, Travis.
Thank you, Brandon. I appreciate it.